You ever
cannot
had
close
one of
this
those
access. We
mornings
have
where
right
the
away
air
through
just
here.
The bylaws
feels
state otherwise, sir.
too
You are in
calm?
violation of the agreement.
That
I don't care
weird
what your papers
hush,
say.
like
This
even
gate
the
comes down
birds are
today.
holding their
You are
breath
not
because
cutting my
something
gate. You have
ridiculous
no right
is
to
about
be
to go
here.
down. Yeah, that
We
was
sent
me
you the notice
standing out by
last
my
month.
old
This is
wooden
a clear
farm gate, tightening
violation.
the hinges,
Anh luôn như
sweat
vậy.
rolling down
Anh
my
không bao giờ
back,
nghe tôi nói.
the sunrise
Nói cái
barely
gì?
stretching over the
Chính
pasture.
cô mới là
It
người
was
gây ra
supposed to
mọi
be a
chuyện.
quiet day. Then out of nowhere, I hear sirens, 3 police
Anh đứng
cruisers
lại đó cho
barreling
tôi.
down my dirt road tires,
Sao anh
kicking
dám
up a
làm chuyện
storm,
này rồi bỏ
like
chạy
they're
hả?
hunting some dangerous outlaw instead of coming to the same patch of land I've called home for more than 20 years. And right behind them, wouldn't you know it, Karen Whitmore herself, queen of Maple Ridge Estates, pastel pink blazer shining in the morning sun, cell phone glued to her ear in one hand, HOA clipboard in the other, lips pursed so tight you'd think she was holding in a sneeze for the last 50 years. That gate is illegal. Take it down, she shouts before the cruisers even come to a full stop. I blink, wipe the sweat from my forehead, look at her, then the cops, and all I can think is, here we go again. The officers step out, 3 of them looking more confused than concerned, shifting their weight like they're not sure if they're supposed to break up a riot or just fetch a lost cat. Karen struts right up to me, finger pointed, her voice rising. Arrest him like she's casting a spell or something. I reach into my back pocket as slow and calm as a man can and pull out my golden badge, holding it up so the sunlight bounces off the metal. And I say, real steady, ma'am. You just called the sheriff on the sheriff. You ever see a person's brain short circuit? Karen's face right then was worth every bit of nonsense she ever pulled. I swear it was almost worth all the trouble. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I walk you through how that whole showdown ended with the HOA president in handcuffs and a crowd of neighbors cheering on the sidelines, let me back up a sec, because the truth is this war didn't start with blue lights on my road. It started long before on a patch of sun-soaked land my daddy built with his own hands back in the 70s. We're talking real roots here. My granddad put down the first post back when this place was all wild grass and wild dreams, before any talk of neighborhoods, before the first mailbox or mailbox color dispute. That old oak out front, it's been standing since before the Civil War branches stretched wide like it's holding up the sky. My dad used to tell me, as long as that gate swings, this family stands. Every morning I'd hear the rooster crow, grab a chipped mug of black coffee, and sit on the porch as the sun climbed up over the fields. I'd feed the horses, check the fences, and head into town for my shift at the sheriff's department. Nobody bothered me, not really. Not until the developers rolled in and renamed half the county. They called it Maple Ridge Estates. Sounds fancy, right? Like a vacation spot or a fancy cheese. But it was just a bunch of identical beige houses, shoulder to shoulder, dropped right on what used to be open pasture. And with those houses came the plague, the HOA. You could smell the trouble before the paint was even dry. At first I tried to play nice. I showed up at their welcome barbecue, even bought a slice of Karen's famous lemon meringue pie, Lord. That thing was so tart it could strip paint off a truck. Karen Whitmore, new president. Middle-aged, sharper cheekbones than any woman I'd ever met. Opinions, even sharper eyes that could find a smudge on a window a mile away. She ran the HOA like a drill sergeant, except her battlefield was people's lawns and her weapon was that clipboard. In less than a month, she'd fined 2 families for leaving trash cans out an extra hour and told another their mailbox was too rustic for community standards. I remember laughing with my wife Sarah about it one night. Long as she stays on her side of the fence, we'll be just fine. Yeah, I should have known better. Karen didn't believe in fences, just boundaries she could move whenever she pleased. One morning after a storm split a fence post, I was hammering in a new one when Karen rolled up in her silver SUV, windows down, radio off, silence so heavy you could feel it. Morning I called, she didn't even blink. Mr. Whitaker, we've had several complaints about your gate. I almost spit out my coffee. My gate. It's positioned on what we believe is HOA-managed land, part of the new community road. You'll need to move it back 20 feet to comply with neighborhood standards. I let out a laugh I didn't even try to hide. Ma'am, this gate's been right here since before you were born. That road isn't part of your HOA. always has been private property. Her lips thinned to a hard line. We'll see about that. Our bylaws state you can quote bylaws all day, but county records beat your binder. Her eyes narrowed and she practically hissed. If you refuse, we'll escalate. I shrugged. Then escalate. And she drove off, tires crunching like bones under her wheels. That was just the first volley. Over the next few weeks, the games began. An official-looking letter from the HOA Compliance Division appeared in my mailbox. $250 fine for gate obstruction. A violation notice pinned to my fence printed in bright red. One morning, 2 men in reflective vests showed up measuring the distance from my gate to the road, snapping photos like they were documenting a crime scene. I walked up, hands on my belt, doing my best not to laugh. "Can I help you, boys?" The older one cleared his throat. Safety inspection, sir." "For what road obstruction?" "Whose road?" I asked. "Maple Ridge Estates," he said, but his eyes were already darting toward the county line marker. I pointed it out 10 feet away. "That right there is the end of Maple Ridge. This side belongs to me. You're trespassing." They realized quick they'd been set up. And like clockwork, Karen's SUV swooped in. "Gentlemen, continue your work." She smirked at me. "You can't threaten county workers, Mr. Whitaker." "They're not county." "I sign their paychecks," I said. She actually stuttered, then tried to recover. "We'll settle this with law enforcement." I didn't bother telling her the law stopped with me. Sometimes letting someone talk themselves into a hole is the best move you got. A week later, HOA members were driving by slow phones out filming my gate. Sarah shook her head. "They're trying to bait you. Let 'em," I said. "Arrogance digs its own grave." Karen fired off emails, newsletters, even posted on Facebook calling me a non-compliant neighbor endangering access. My buddies from town called up John. "What did you do this time?" The answer, as usual, was nothing except own land Karen couldn't control. She started showing up more always with her nervous assistant clipboard in tow. "We've reviewed the plat," she'd announced. "The gate violates HOA regulations." I'd look her in the eye. "Karen County records disagree. You're on private property." "Private." "We'll see about that." She'd snap at her assistant. "Take a photo of this obstruction." I'd lean in. "Touch that gate and you'll be explaining yourself to the sheriff's department." "Oh, please, like you know any sheriff personally." I grinned. "Closer than you think." She threatened, she whined, she filed more complaints. But here's the thing about people like Karen, they don't lose quietly. The more you prove them wrong, the louder they get. She started meeting with the HOA board right out in front of her house, waving folders, pointing at my property like she was prepping for an invasion. Sarah asked, "Why don't you just tell her who you are?" "Not yet." I said I want her to keep digging. And boy, did she dig. Letters, emails, more fines. Night after night, I'd sit on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the road. It was peaceful for a little while, but peace never lasts when a Karen declares war. I knew it sooner or later something big was coming, and when it did, I wanted the world to see exactly how far she'd go. 2 days after that last fence line showdown, I woke to the sound of voices way too early. Not the kind you want to hear before coffee. 2 men in orange vests were back talking, one filming with his phone. Karen's white SUV idled on the road. "Morning, fellas." "You lost?" The older one, hand shaking. "Just an inspection, sir. Safety check on access structures. Who authorized it?" I pressed. He glanced nervously at Karen, who'd just stepped out, sunglasses on, smirk ready. "We're here to ensure community safety, Mr. Whitaker. Your gate's a potential hazard to emergency access." Emergency access. "Karen, this road ends at my barn. The only emergency vehicles coming out here are mine." She ignored me, barked at her inspectors to measure the gate. I blocked the younger one. "Son, who do you work for?" He froze. "They're with our compliance team," Karen snapped. "So not the county," I replied. She rolled her eyes. By HOA regulations, all access points must meet code. Karen, this is a private easement recorded in 1971. You have no authority here, she scoffed. We'll see what the survey says. I could have ended it then. But you know what? Sometimes it's just too satisfying to watch someone walk right into their own trap.
Cannot close this access.
I
We have
grinned.
right away through here.
Do
The
your
bylaws state
inspection.
otherwise, sir.
Just
You are in
make sure you get
violation
my
of the
good
agreement.
side.
I don't care what your papers say.
Karen
This
left
gate
soon
comes
after
down
barking
today.
orders
You
into
are
her
not
phone.
cutting my
The
gate. You
inspectors
have
couldn't
no
pack
right
up
to be
fast
here.
enough. By that
We
evening,
sent you the
Sarah brought
notice
in
last
another
month.
letter,
This is a
another
clear
hearing,
violation.
this time
Anh luôn như
accusing
vậy.
me of
Anh
endangering
không bao giờ
public
nghe tôi nói.
safety.
Cô nói cái gì?
Complete with blurry photos,
cô mới là
red
người gây ra
circles,
mọi
and
chuyện.
arrows like one of those true crime shows. They're getting desperate, I
Anh
laughed.
đứng lại đó cho
Sarah
tôi.
frowned.
Sao anh dám làm
This
chuyện
is
này rồi bỏ chạy
harassment,
hả?
John. Yeah, I said. And harassment leaves evidence. That night I set up extra cameras, one on the road, one on the gate, another facing the woods. If Karen wanted to play spy games, I was going to have the whole show on tape. Next morning, reinforcements arrived, 3 HOA board members and a man in a cheap suit with a clipboard. I was feeding the horses when they marched up. Sir, I'm with County Code Enforcement. We've received complaints. Do you have a warrant or inspection order? I cut him off. It's a courtesy visit. Courtesy doesn't require trespassing. Step off my property. Karen piped up. You can't stop a county officer. What's your name? I asked the man. Todd. Badge number? He looked at his shoes. I'm contracted through the HOA for preliminary assessments. I laughed. So you're not county, you're a private consultant. Karen's face turned red. He's qualified. Qualified to play dress-up and hold a clipboard, I said. She stepped forward, heels sinking in the dirt. You're being very hostile, Mr. Whitaker. This could go on your record. I smiled. Karen, you have no idea what my record is. That shook her. She backed off, told her people to document the obstruction, and left. Sarah shook her head. You really shouldn't toy with her. I'm not toying, I said. I'm teaching. That night I called Marcus at Property Records. Marcus, I need the original plats for my property and the HOA parcel. He chuckled. Karen again, huh? She's building a case out of thin air. You could just flash your badge, John. Not yet. Let her think she's winning. The higher she climbs, the funnier the fall. Karen kicked up her campaign. Flyers on mailboxes, Facebook rants, pictures of my gate, a danger to community access. Comments flew back and forth. Half the neighbors roasted her. My favorite Karen, it's a farm gate, not Fort Knox. But then a certified letter mandatory removal date for my gate pending police assistance. Sarah asked if I'd let her go through with it. Yep, I grinned. And I'm going to have the cameras rolling when she does. The next morning dawned bright and clear. I sipped coffee on the porch, watching Karen's SUV creeping up the road, followed by 3 police cruisers. Sarah peeked out the door. You planned this, didn't you? Let's just say I'm ready for my close-up, I said. Karen stepped out first, pointing dramatically at the gate. There it is, officers. That's the obstruction I told you about. One officer scratched his head. Ma'am, this is private property. Not for long, she snapped. It's part of our community road. Remove it. The officer turned to me. Sir, can we talk for a minute? I walked over, Karen smirking like she'd already won. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my badge, let it shine in the sun. The young officer froze. Sheriff Whitaker. Karen's jaw dropped. Wait, you're... I smiled. Yes, ma'am. You just called the sheriff to enforce HOA rules against the sheriff. Dead silence. Karen's face went from red to sheet white. The officers tried not to laugh. Sarah, leaning on the porch, bit her lip to keep from grinning. I slipped on my uniform jacket, gold star glinting. Now what's the issue with my gate on my own land? Sergeant Gomez, who'd worked for me for years, stepped forward. Sheriff, we got a call about a community obstruction. The HOA president said she had county authorization to remove this gate. I turned to Karen. County authorization, huh? You mind showing me the paperwork? She fumbled through her folder papers, rattling. I don't have it with me, but it was filed with whom I asked. The community committee. I raised an eyebrow. The committee isn't a legal authority, Mrs. Whitmore. Filing complaints with your HOA doesn't make them county orders. Gomez stifled a laugh. Karen took a deep breath, trying to recover. This is a misunderstanding. The community needs the road open. I pointed at the weathered wooden sign, Whitaker Ranch, private property. Est, 1971. The access road belongs to me, not the HOA. You don't get to decide what stays or goes. Her face turned red again. But people drive through here without permission. That's trespassing. One officer nearly laughed. Karen glared. You're abusing your authority. I shrugged. I wasn't even using it. But if I were, you'd be in cuffs for filing a false police report. You want to test how far we take this today? That shut her up. Sarah walked down the driveway, coffee in hand. Everything okay out here, just handling another HOA emergency? Honey, apparently our century-old gate is a threat to public safety. She smiled at Karen funny. I didn't see the HOA out here when the flood washed out the main road last year. Karen's eyes darted around, desperate for backup. We can resolve this civilly. I agree, I said. Let's resolve it by following the law. I asked Gomez to pull up the county parcel map on his tablet, boundary lines clear as day. Whitaker Ranch private easement renewed 2005. HOA boundary stops 40 yards before the gate. Karen gawked at the screen. That can't be right. It's county data, Gomez said. No mistake. I folded my arms. So unless you've got another version of reality for the courts, I'd suggest you stop wasting police resources. Her jaw shook. You think you're so clever, don't you? You can't hide behind that badge forever. I'll report you to the state board. I smiled. Go ahead. I'm on that board. The officers walked back to their cars, grinning. Gomez nodded. You good, Sheriff? I'm good. Clear the call. Karen stood there, trembling. Neighbors peeking from across the road, everyone pretending to check their mail. I told her, Careful, Karen. Filing false police reports can get you in real trouble, especially when you do it to the sheriff. She spun on her heel, stormed off, tires spinning gravel. Sarah shook her head. You know she's not done right. Oh, I'm counting on it. People like her don't stop until they've embarrassed themselves completely. That night I sat on the porch, like glowing crickets, singing Gate Still Standing. She'd tried to use the system against me, but she forgot the system was mine, and that my friend was only the beginning. So you'd think after that scene, the blue lights, the badges, the whole neighborhood pretending not to watch from behind their curtains, Karen would finally get the message. But let me tell you something about people who mistake authority for power. They never know when to quit. That next morning, just as the sun crested the barn roof, I spotted a bright orange paper flapping in the breeze pinned right to my gate. Final notice. Immediate removal required. The font was so big it nearly shouted. Sarah found it before I did and groaned. She actually printed another one. I couldn't help but laugh. Persistence is a virtue, stupidity not so much. That day the emails started rolling in from neighbors, most of whom I barely knew. Screenshots of new HOA announcements. Karen had doubled down, claiming unauthorized individuals were interfering with community safety standards. She twisted the story every which way, even managed to post a picture of my gate on the community Facebook page with a fresh caption, Sheriff or not, rules are rules. I realized then she wasn't just angry, she was plotting. I started reviewing the footage from my security cameras every night. It was almost like my own late-night drama, Karen's headlights crawling slow past the gate, pausing, her face ghostly in the glow. By the third night, she got brave, started showing up on foot, flashlight in hand, checking hinges, measuring, snapping pictures. Sarah, standing over my shoulder while I watched the playback, said, "What are you going to do?" "Document everything," I replied. In my line of work, evidence speaks louder than arrogance. Next morning, I drove out to the county clerk's office and asked for certified copies of every land deed I could get stamped, notarized, the works. Patty the clerk just shook her head and smiled. Karen trouble again. You could say that, I replied. She's been in here 3 times this week, leaving red-faced every time. Perfect, I grinned. Paper trail's building itself. By the time I got home, there was a new summons from the HOA board in my mailbox. Another violation hearing. Sarah rolled her eyes. It's like she wants to go to war. I folded the letter and tucked it away. We'll give her one, just not the kind she expects. That evening, I made another call to Gomez at the station. Hey, next time Karen calls dispatch about me, don't stop her. Let her make the call, log it officially.
You are in violation of the agreement. I don't care what your papers say. This gate comes down today.
You are not
You're
cutting
setting
my
her
gate.
up,
You have
huh?
no right to be
Not
here.
setting her up, I said.
We sent you
Just
the notice
letting her
last
walk
month.
into her
This
own
is a clear
consequences.
violation.
When people think they're untouchable, justice doesn't have to chase them. It just waits for them to show up and confess with a smile. By Saturday, the whole neighborhood was buzzing. Apparently, word travels fast when the sheriff gets into a brawl with the HOA. Depending on who you listen to, I was either a tyrant with a badge or a hero with a backbone. I didn't care much for either. What I cared about was finally standing up to Karen, and apparently, I wasn't alone. That morning, I made a sign big and bold, private easement. No HOA jurisdiction. Underneath, I taped copies of the county deed and survey plat laminated for good measure. Within hours, neighbors started drifting by, some apologizing for siding with Karen, others muttering about how tired they were of her policing their mailbox colors and lawn heights. One woman clutching a poodle under her arm whispered, "You have no idea how many of us wish someone would finally stand up to her." "Oh, I've got an idea," I told her, "and I plan to stand tall." I guess Karen heard the commotion because that evening her silver SUV pulled up, again 2 board members trailing behind her like kids sent to the principal's office. She wasted no time. "Mr. Whitaker, your little sign violates visual harmony standards under HOA guidelines." I raised my hand. "Karen, I'm not under your HOA. None of this property is." She waved her folder like a shield. "You are setting a dangerous precedent. You can't do whatever you want just because you wear a badge." "Actually, I can do whatever I want on my land," I said, "because that's how property rights work. The badge has nothing to do with it." She stepped closer, finger in my face. "You think the law doesn't apply to you? You want to talk about abuse of power, ma'am? Let's talk about you forging inspection notices and sending unlicensed contractors onto private property." Her face turned pale as new paint. "I don't know what you're talking about." I turned to the growing crowd of neighbors. "You all should know I have video footage of her so-called inspectors trespassing, measuring, taking photos without warrant or consent. If they touch so much as a hinge, it's vandalism." Someone muttered, "That's illegal, isn't it?" "It's harassment and it's criminal," I said. Karen's hands trembled. "You wouldn't." "I would. And I will." That was when I handed her a folder labeled Exhibit A, certified records, emails, screenshots of her Facebook rants. "This is a formal cease and desist. Any more interference, and we move to criminal trespass. You've already filed a false police report. That's strike 1. She turned to her board members, desperate for backup. "Don't just stand there. He can't threaten us. The HOA has rights too. One of them, Frank." Older tired finally piped up, "Karen, he's literally the sheriff. Maybe we should back off." "Back off," she shrieked. "He's mocking our authority." "You're confusing authority with control, ma'am," I said. "You can't fine people into submission out here. This isn't your cul-de-sac." That broke the tension. The crowd actually laughed. For a second, Karen lost her grip on the neighborhood. For the first time, nobody looked away from her glare. The fear was gone. I'd been waiting for that moment. I twisted the knife gently. "Since you're so worried about safety, I checked your HOA's permit status. Turns out Maple Ridge Estates never filed for a road maintenance license. That gravel road you keep claiming it's not zoned for public use. Technically, every time your members drive past my gate, they're trespassing too." Karen's eyes went wide. "That's not true." I pulled out the document, county seal glinting. "It's public record. You tried to change it, Patty, at the clerk's office, said you've been in there 3 times trying to rewrite the map." She backed up a step, flustered. You can't talk to me like that. I just did, I replied. Sarah, arms crossed, added, "You should probably stop digging, Karen. You're already halfway to China." That did it. She stormed off, board members shuffling behind, crowd murmuring. A few even clapped. Finally, someone shut her up, but pride mixed with humiliation. That's a dangerous cocktail. 2 days later, the retaliation began. It started small anonymous flyers under mailboxes claiming I was under investigation for misuse of authority. Then came the anonymous calls to the station concerned citizens, questioning whether the sheriff should be allowed to own private land near an HOA boundary. My deputies rolled their eyes, but it ticked me off how far she'd go. Karen wasn't just trying to win, she wanted to ruin me. Then one morning, Sarah came rushing into my office with her phone. "John, you need to see this." A video had popped up on the community page, grainy, zoomed-in footage of me locking my gate with Karen's voice narrating, "Here you can see the sheriff obstructing a public roadway. Proof of corruption and abuse." I sighed. She's getting desperate. Sarah frowned. "You can't let her slander you like this." "I won't. But I'm not fighting her online. I'll let her hang herself with her own rope." That night, I reviewed security footage again, labeling every file. Around 1:43 p.m., one clip caught my eye. Headlights stopping, 2 figures stepping out, metal clinking. One wore a pink blazer. "She's actually trying to take the gate apart," Sarah said, peering over my shoulder. "Yep," I smiled. "And that, my dear, is evidence of intent." Before bed, I called dispatch. "Next time a certain HOA president shows up after midnight, send a patrol car. We'll catch her red-handed. Justice doesn't always knock politely. Sometimes it waits behind a gate." By Monday, the storm had hit full force. Karen, embarrassed but determined, doubled down. The HOA newsletter hit every mailbox, community safety alert, unauthorized structure under investigation, blurry photo of my gate. Bold accusations by name. Sarah read it out loud and laughed. "She actually put your name in print." "That's good," I said. "Now it's actionable. Defamation in print, that's a gift for a sheriff." But Karen wasn't finished. Next day, yellow stakes showed up near my property line, each with a little HOA tag, "New community access point under construction." I rubbed my temples. "She's building her own road now," Sarah pointed out. "She's doing it on county-protected wetland." Sure enough, a quick look at county maps confirmed it drainage protection zone. Any digging there? Big fines. I could have shut her down with a phone call. Instead, I called Marcus again. "She's excavating county land," I said. "You want me to pull the environmental violation codes?" "No," I said, "just send a county inspector out unannounced." 2 days later, that's what happened. A white county truck pulled up. 2 inspectors out with clipboards measuring, frowning. Karen arrived all smiles, ready to show off her project. The minute she realized they were from the county, not her HOA, her face fell. I watched from the porch as the conversation unfolded. "You've broken at least 3 environmental protection ordinances by digging into a drainage easement. Cease operations immediately." Karen spluttered. "But this is HOA property." "No, ma'am, this belongs to the county." Red stop work order signs hammered into the ground. Karen's big plan turned official investigation. But she didn't go quietly. That night, I got a barrage of emails, HOA complaints, anonymous threats, even a warning I'd be exposed to the press. Sarah laughed. "Exposed for what? Owning a fence?" "Apparently that's a federal crime in HOA land." I stayed cautious. When people get humiliated, they either disappear or self-destruct. Karen. She wasn't going anywhere quietly. That night, just before midnight, my phone buzzed a motion alert on my security feed. 2 figures creeping along the fence line. One in a pink blazer, the other Dennis, her vice president flashlight in one hand, power drill in the other. "She just crossed the line," I muttered, grabbing my jacket. I radioed dispatch. "Unit 12, this is Sheriff Whitaker. I've got 2 trespassers on private property at Whitaker Ranch. Send backup." Within minutes, 2 patrol cars rolled in headlights, catching Karen and Dennis mid-turn at the gate, their faces white as ghosts. Evening, Mrs. Whitmore. Working late, I called out, stepping into the light. She froze, drill in hand. Dennis dropped his flashlight. Sheriff, we were just committing vandalism on private property, I finished. The officer stepped out. One body cam rolling, Karen started babbling. This is all a misunderstanding. We were performing an HOA safety inspection. At midnight, with power tools, I raised an eyebrow. The officer spoke up. Ma'am, we have you on video attempting to dismantle a locked gate on private property. That's vandalism and trespassing. You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president, she pleaded, and I'm the county sheriff. Difference is mine actually means something.
You cannot close this access. We have right away
the
through
red
here.
and blue lights flashed. Neighbors' lights flicked on curtains.
I don't care what your
Parted phones
papers
came
say.
out.
This gate comes
For
down
the first
today.
time, Karen
You are
looked
not
small,
cutting my gate. You have no right to be here.
The officers guided her to the patrol car.
We sent you the notice last month.
Sarah
This
slipped
is
her
a
arm
clear
through mine and
violation.
whispered, "You got her good this time."
Anh không bao giờ nghe
Didn't
tôi
have
nói.
to, I said softly. She
Chính
got
cô mới là
herself.
người gây ra mọi
As the
chuyện.
cars drove off, taillights fading, I stood by that old gate, scratched but unbroken.
Anh đứng lại đó cho
It
tôi.
wasn't just a gate anymore.
Sao anh dám làm
It was
chuyện
a
này rồi bỏ
lesson.
chạy hả?
And even as the quiet settled, I knew this wasn't the end. By the time those squad cars disappeared down the road, blue lights fading in the pines, word had already started spreading. This was Maple Ridge after all. Nothing stayed secret, not even at midnight. You could practically hear the gossip chain whirring to life phones buzzing before the dust even settled on the driveway. Sarah leaned against me, coffee mug warm in her hands, and said, "Well, that's one way to end an HOA meeting." I let out a tired chuckle, still listening to the silence that finally returned. No shouting, no tires on gravel, just frogs croaking down by the creek and the metallic tick of my gate cooling off in the night air. "Yeah," I said, "but something tells me the meeting isn't over yet. People like Karen don't accept defeat. They just postpone it." And sure enough, by sunrise, the whole community knew. I walked into the station that morning and the dispatcher barely kept a straight face. "Rough night, boss?" I shrugged. "Just another trespass call." She grinned. "Except this one's trending on Facebook." Turns out one of the neighbors caught the whole scene from her upstairs window video, and all red and blue lights dancing off Karen's pink blazer like a circus act. The caption, "HOA president caught breaking into sheriff's property. Thousands of views before breakfast." Inside, holding Karen, sat in a county issue sweater, hands folded in her lap, all the bravado and lip gloss stripped away. She looked up, eyes blazing with humiliation and fury. "You enjoying this?" I leaned in the doorway, arms folded. "No, ma'am. I don't enjoy arresting folks, but I do appreciate when justice saves me the paperwork." She glared. "You humiliated me in front of the entire community. You humiliated yourself the minute you thought HOA bylaws trump state law," I said. She jumped up, voice shaking. "You set me up. You provoked me." I shook my head. "No, Karen, I warned you. You kept escalating. You brought this on yourself." She turned away, muttering, "This isn't over." I sighed. "I know. But after the charges are processed, you'll have plenty of time to think about where to quit." Later that day, she was formally charged trespassing, attempted vandalism, filing a false police report. Nothing major, but enough to stain her reputation in the community for a good long while. And let me tell you, the neighborhood felt it. That afternoon, as I walked through Maple Ridge to check my mail, folks started stopping me. Real smiles this time. None of that tight-lipped, forced politeness they reserved for Karen. Even the ones who used to avert their eyes now gave a nod, sometimes even a handshake. One man, Alan, a retired teacher, said, "Sheriff, you did more for this place in one night than the board did in a decade." Another whispered, "We wanted to speak up, but she threatened to fine us. You finally gave everyone the courage to stand up." I didn't say much, just tipped my hat, felt something lift. Not the kind of justice that comes from a badge, but the kind that comes from balance being restored. You know what I mean? That deep, quiet peace that makes you think maybe all the trouble was worth it. The very next morning, county court called. Karen's lawyer wanted to negotiate before her hearing. She'd like to resolve things amicably. The clerk told me, almost laughing. I showed up and saw Karen in a beige cardigan, hands in her lap, no clipboard, no smirk. Her lawyer cleared his throat. Sheriff Whitaker, my client, would like to make a statement. Karen met my eyes. I went too far. I let things get personal. I thought I was protecting the community, but I crossed lines. I waited, letting the words hang. She took a shaky breath. You were right. The gate's yours. Always was. I nodded. Maybe now we can get back to being neighbors instead of adversaries. Her lawyer pressed on. We'd like to request the charges be dropped in exchange for community service and a formal apology. I could have dragged it out, could have made her sweat every drop of arrogance out of her. But truth was, humiliation was already punishment enough. Fine, I said. Drop the fines, drop the fake violations, and make sure every homeowner she harassed gets a written apology. Then I'll sign off. Karen nodded, her shoulders slumped. Deal. As I turned to leave, I said, one more thing, you might want to step down as HOA president for everyone's sake. She didn't answer. Didn't have to. Sometimes silence is all you need. But the story wasn't quite done. Within a week, the HOA board held an emergency vote, and just like that, Karen was out. Dennis, the vice president who'd played flashlight bandit, resigned too. A new interim president took over a level-headed woman named Janet, who wasted no time tearing down half of Karen's rules. No more fines for mailbox colors, no more threats over lawn height, no more HOA patrols sneaking through people's yards at midnight. For the first time in years, Maple Ridge felt like an actual neighborhood again. Less like a gated community, more like a place where folks actually wanted to say hi to each other. One Saturday, as I was mending a fence post, Janet came by with a folder. Sheriff, she said, smiling nervously, the board wanted to deliver this in person. I opened it, a formal apology stamped with the HOA seal. At the bottom, in careful handwriting, was Karen's signature. She insisted on writing it herself, Janet said. I smiled. Well, that's progress. She nodded. We're trying to make this place right again. People finally realize what real authority looks like. That night, Sarah and I sat on the porch watching the sun go down. The air smelled of honeysuckle and cedar. She nudged me. You could have pressed harder, made her pay more. I shook my head. Then I'd be just like her, using power because I cannot, because it's right. She smiled. That's why you wear the badge. I looked at the old gate still standing. No, I said. That's why I built the gate in the first place. Later that week, as part of her community service, Karen showed up early to repaint the fence she'd damaged. She tried not to look at me as she dipped the brush. I just nodded a good morning. After a while, she said quietly, For what it's worth, I was wrong about you. I shrugged. You were wrong about a lot of people, Karen. Maybe this'll help you get it right next time. By sunset, the fence gleamed a perfect chestnut, same color my father used when he built it 50 years ago. She packed up, hesitated, then said almost in a whisper, It's a good gate. Yeah, I said, it is. And as she drove away, something strange happened. I realized maybe the whole ordeal had been worth it. Maple Ridge was peaceful again, and the gate that started it all, stronger than ever. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about restoring balance. That night, as the last light faded, balance finally returned. But you know, even after all that, things have a way of getting more tangled before they get simple. Because when the dust settled and the drama faded, something else was waiting in the wings, the truth about the HOA itself. And well, that was a whole other can of worms. The week after Karen's public downfall, Maple Ridge felt like a town shaking off a long, stubborn winter. The air actually felt lighter. Neighbors started chatting again over the fence, and even the birds seemed a little louder. Folks who'd been afraid to challenge the HOA were suddenly free mailboxes, sprouted new paint jobs, garden gnomes popped up where there used to be nothing but approved mulch, and the threat of a random fine disappeared overnight. But the truth is, when you dig up one weed in a garden like this, you're bound to find a few more hiding underneath. About 3 days after Karen's resignation, I got a call from the county auditor's office. The new HOA president, Janet, had stumbled onto something strange in the accounts, missing money, odd payments, invoices that didn't match up with any actual work done in the community. She asked me if I'd mind taking a look neighbor to neighbor, not as sheriff, so I agreed. Turns out Karen had left behind more than just angry neighbors and a battered fence. She'd been running a side hustle using HOA funds. Over a year, she'd sent thousands of dollars to a company called Whitmore Property Management. The funny part, the company didn't even exist outside a P.O. box in the next town over. When the county auditor brought me the receipts, I couldn't help but laugh. So she fined people for mailbox
We have right
paint
away through here.
The
while
bylaws
billing
state
the
otherwise,
HOA
sir.
for
You are
fake
in violation of the
inspections.
Agreement. I don't care what
He
your
shook his
papers
head.
say, this gate comes
And
down today.
$2,400
You are
a
not
month
cutting
for
my gate.
consulting
You have no
fees.
right to be here.
She was making
We
more
sent
off
you
her
the
neighbors
notice
than the
last
town
month.
mayor.
This is a clear
Sarah nearly
violation.
dropped her coffee when I
Anh
told
luôn
her.
như vậy.
That
Anh
woman
không
was
bao giờ
out
nghe
here
tôi nói.
policing lawn ornaments
gì?
while lining her own
Chính
pockets.
cô mới
I
là người gây ra
nodded,
mọi chuyện.
and she still thought she could outsmart a sheriff. The county
Anh đứng lại đó
froze
cho
the
tôi.
HOA's accounts within the
Sao anh
week.
dám làm chuyện này rồi
Janet
bỏ
called an
chạy hả?
emergency meeting this time at the clubhouse, not Karen's living room, and asked me to come as just another neighbor. When I walked in, the room was packed. Some folks brought folding chairs, some brought snacks, and one family even made cookies shaped like little gates. Janet stood up front, papers in hand, voice trembling but determined. "We learned something these past months," she said. "This neighborhood isn't a kingdom, and the HOA isn't the law. We're supposed to protect each other, not control each other." The room broke into applause, real applause, not the fake kind that comes from fear. Afterward, neighbors approached me, shaking my hand, some with tears in their eyes. "You showed us we don't have to be afraid anymore," one said. "This feels like home again," said another. I just nodded, smiling, but inside it felt like something finally set right, like the gate itself. Sturdy, honest standing, because it belonged. A few days later, I walked the fence line just as the sun was setting, that orange glow slanting across the fields. The wood felt smooth under my hand, warm from the day old, but solid, kind of like this land, kind of like the promise my granddad used to talk about. He'd say, "A man's gate is more than just an entrance. It's a promise that what's inside is earned and respected." Funny how you don't really get that until you've had to defend it. A week after the dust settled, a letter came in the mail. No envelope, just my name written in shaky script. I opened it, 3 short lines. "Sheriff Whitaker, thank you for not pressing harder. I let pride get in the way. The shelter work has been humbling. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know authority means responsibility, not control. Karen W." I sat for a long time just staring at it, letting the silence settle. Sarah found me and asked, "Who's it from?" "Someone finally learning what real leadership means," I replied. She smiled. "You think she'll ever come around?" I shrugged. "Maybe. But if she does, I hope it's with cookies, not complaints." The papers and the news ran with the story, but they mostly got it wrong. Some called it Sheriff Teaches HOA President a Lesson. Some said Gate Showdown in Maple Ridge, but none of them really got what happened. The real story was simpler, just a bunch of neighbors learning to trust each other. Again, a lesson about boundaries, not just the kind you can see, but the ones you build out of respect. One day, while I was out checking the back pasture, a couple kids from Maple Ridge rode their bikes up to the road. They stopped, waved. "Hi, Sheriff," I waved back. "You kids behaving." One grinned. "Mrs. Janet says we can paint our mailboxes whatever color we want." "Now," I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my fence pliers. Progress, right? Sarah watched them ride off, smiling. It's funny you've kept the peace in this county for decades, but it took one HOA president to test your patience more than any criminal ever did. I shook my head. Criminals are predictable. Karen wasn't. She asked, "You think she's changed?" I watched the wind sway the private easement. No HOA jurisdiction sign. Not completely, but maybe she finally learned that fences and rules only work when they're built on respect, not ego. That evening, as the sky turned orange and the shadows grew long, I found myself by the gate again, one hand resting on the wood, the other holding my mug, breathing in the silence. It hit me right then that this was never about the gate or even about Karen. It was about boundaries, the kind you defend not with a badge, but with integrity. Stars started blinking awake overhead, and Sarah called from the porch. "What now, Sheriff?" I smiled, looking back at the house, at her, at the land that had put up with me all these years. Now we finally rest easy. And that, I guess, is the secret. Real strength isn't about forcing folks to follow you. It's about earning their respect. Sometimes standing your ground is just standing still, waiting while the storm destroys itself. Sometimes it's letting truth and time do the work instead of anger or revenge. If you ever find yourself up against a Karen or anyone who thinks rules mean control, just remember, hold your ground, breathe deep, and let the dust settle. Time's on your side. And if this story gave you a little hope or even just a smile, do me a favor. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about karma, justice, and the kind of peace that comes from doing what's right. Some folks think a story like this just fades away once the main villain bows out. But that's not how life works. Not out here, not anywhere. Even after Karen was gone from her throne, the aftershocks of her reign rolled through Maple Ridge. You could feel it at the first community meeting. After her resignation, a kind of nervous relief, but also folks not quite sure who they were supposed to be mad at anymore. You ever see a group of grown adults trying to learn how to be neighbors again after years of living by a rule book written in fear? It's awkward. It's hopeful. And honestly, it's more heartwarming than anything I'd seen in uniform. The county investigation into the HOA's finances dragged on, and the more they dug, the more mess they uncovered. Turns out Karen had been using HOA funds to pay her shell company for jobs that never happened. Landscaping, security checks, mailbox inspections, all of it billed at rates high enough to make a city lawyer blush. There were receipts for flowers that never bloomed, community events that existed only on paper. Even a maintenance invoice for a non-existent pond pump that had supposedly run up a 4-digit repair bill. Janet and the new board opened every ledger, made every payment transparent, and within weeks the whole community finally saw what had been happening under their noses. What I remember most from those days wasn't the anger. It was the way people started looking each other in the eye again. It was like every neighbor was waking up from a bad dream, realizing the fence between them wasn't nearly as important as the handshake over it. At the next board election, more folks than ever volunteered to help, not out of ambition, but out of a genuine want to make things better. One afternoon, Janet dropped by the ranch with a small gift basket, a thank you from the neighborhood. "We never could have done this without you standing up, John." I smiled. "Took all of us, Janet. Just needed someone stubborn enough to plant their boots in the dirt." She laughed. "Or someone too ornery to move them." That afternoon, we sat out by the gate, watching the light change, swapping stories about the wildest HOA letters we'd ever gotten. Hers was a fine for a wind chime that clashed with community aesthetics. Mine, of course, was the infamous gate obstruction citation now framed in my office for a laugh. About a week later, I saw Karen in town, plainclothes, sunglasses, walking a rescue dog from the animal shelter where she'd been volunteering. I almost didn't recognize her. No clipboard, no pink blazer, just a tired woman trying to keep her head down. She caught my eye, hesitated, then nodded. That was it, no words, no drama. Maybe she was finally learning what it meant to let go. Maybe, just maybe she'd become a better neighbor too. The kids in Maple Ridge started a tradition painting rocks and lining them along the path by my gate, each one with a little message. Justice, hope, be kind. No Karens allowed. That last one made me laugh every time I walked by. Sarah joked it was like the gate had become a landmark, Whitaker's Wall, a symbol of a neighborhood that survived its own civil war. Life rolled on. Spring turned to summer, fields grew thick and green, and the drama faded to a distant memory. Sometimes a neighbor would stop by with a pie or a story, and more than once I found myself telling the tale of the Great Gate Showdown to someone new who'd just moved in. I'd always finish with the same lesson. Out here, the law's important, but respect matters more. Don't let your badge, your title, or your ego get bigger than your welcome mat. One night, as the sun set pink and gold over the hills, Sarah and I walked the fence line. She squeezed my hand. Would you do it all again? I thought for a moment, listening to the frogs, the distant laughter from someone's backyard. Yeah, I would. Because sometimes doing what's right means standing alone until others realize they're not alone after all. She smiled. You're not half as stubborn as you pretend you know. I grinned. Don't tell anyone. I've got a reputation to keep. Later that week, the new HOA board sent out a letter, this time not a threat, not a fine, but a genuine thank you to every homeowner who helped rebuild the sense of community. There was even a proposal to name the little dirt road that ran past my gate Whitaker Lane. I said they ought to name it Second Chances Lane instead, because, well, everyone out here had just earned one. A month later, I came home to find a group of neighbors setting up a potluck near the gate tables covered with casseroles and lemonade, laughter spilling out into the evening air. Janet called out, Sheriff, come get a plate before the kids eat all the good stuff. For the first time in a long while, there was no tension, just folks being folks, kids riding bikes, music playing low from someone's truck radio. The gate stood in the background, strong and steady, not as a barrier, but as a gathering place. I looked around at all those faces, some new, some weathered, all of them finally free from the shadow of fear. That old ache in my shoulders, the one that comes from years of being the one who always has to stand guard, eased up a little. I realized in that moment that I hadn't just won back my own peace, I'd helped give everyone else a chance to reclaim theirs. When the stars started coming out, Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. This is what it's all about, isn't it? I nodded. Not about gates, not about bylaws or fines, about people, about trust. She laughed softly. And about knowing when to hold the line. I smiled, and when to open the gate. As the potluck wound down and neighbors wandered home, I stayed out a while leaning on that old wooden post, thinking about everything that had changed. It struck me that the real victory wasn't beating Karen or even fixing the HOA. It was remembering and reminding others that every community, no matter how much trouble it's been through, can find its way back to being a family. So if you're still listening, here's what I want you to take away. Fences can keep people out, but they can also mark a space that's safe for everyone inside. Stand up for what's right, sure, but never forget to leave a gate open for forgiveness, for second chances, and for neighbors who finally want to come home. And if this story reminds you of your own crazy HOA battles or neighborhood legends, don't be shy. Drop your story in the comments. Let folks know they're not alone. And hey, if you're the kind of person who believes in redemption and justice that doesn't always end in punishment, stick around. I've got plenty more tales about karma, about standing your ground, and about the kind of peace that makes a place worth calling home. Because out here, justice isn't just something that happens in court. It's something that grows strong and stubborn in the space between two neighbors who finally agree to take down the fences and shake hands across the line. Funny thing about peace, it doesn't always show up with a parade or a big speech. Sometimes it creeps back in quietly, like the cool breeze that rolls in after a summer storm. That's how Maple Ridge felt in the months after the whole gate war, a little quieter, a little more trusting, and honestly a whole lot more like home. I noticed the changes everywhere I looked. Neighbors who'd barely spoken for years started trading homegrown tomatoes and lawnmower repairs. The gossip on Facebook went from angry rants about fines and rule breakers to birthday announcements, lost pets, and backyard barbecue invitations. Even the old mailman who used to joke about wearing body armor for his daily rounds commented that he hadn't delivered a single complaint letter in weeks. Sarah and I took more walks together. Every so often, a kid would zip past on a bike and call out, "Hi, Sheriff," or "Hi, Mr. Whitaker." Sometimes I'd wave back. Sometimes I'd just tip my hat and enjoy the simple feeling of being another face in the neighborhood, not just the guy with the badge and the old family gate. But if I'm honest, I think the moment I truly knew the storm had passed was the first Saturday of summer, when Janet and the new board organized a real community event, a potluck right by the old gate. No hidden agenda, no secret board meeting, no reminders about mailbox height or grass length, just tables covered in home-cooking lemonade and sweet tea dogs, barking music floating through the trees. Karen didn't show, at least not at first. She kept her distance, did her hours at the animal shelter, and stayed out of HOA business. But then toward the end of the afternoon, just as folks were starting to pack up, she walked quietly down the road leading a shy hound on a leash. She paused at the edge of the crowd, uncertain. I saw Janet spot her, then wave her over. No drama, no judgment, just a simple neighborly gesture. Karen hesitated, then walked up and said hello, voice barely above a whisper. She handed over a tray of brownies, probably store-bought, but nobody cared. And for the first time, I saw her smile just a little as someone's little girl handed her a lemonade. I watched all this from my place by the fence, a lump in my throat, and realized it wasn't just the fence or the gate that had changed, it was all of us. People finally realized that living in a community isn't about rules or punishment. It's about forgiveness, about pitching in, about letting go of grudges before they turn into wars. The next morning, Sarah and I sat on the porch, sun coming up warm and golden dew sparkling on the grass. She nudged me with her foot. "You ever think you'd see the day I chuckled?" "Honestly, not in this lifetime," she smiled. "Well, you did good, even if you got a few more gray hairs out of it." I grinned. Keeps me humble. And you know, maybe we all needed that lesson, even Karen. We watched the sunrise, neither of us saying much, letting the peace soak in. Sometimes the biggest fights in life aren't about who's right or wrong, but about who's willing to lay down their pride first. It's easy to swing a hammer, build a wall, or shout across a fence, but it takes real guts to say I was wrong, to shake hands and start again. As the weeks went by, the Gate of Justice became a Maple Ridge legend. The kids used it as a meeting spot. Folks gave directions based on it. Someone even painted a little sign, "Home is just past the old gate." I kept the sign right where it was a reminder to anyone who passed by that stubbornness and justice don't have to be enemies, and that forgiveness is the only thing that makes winning really matter. I started getting letters from folks all over, some with their own stories of HOA drama, some just wanting to say thank you, some asking for advice. I always told them the same thing. Stand up for what's right, but leave the door open for mercy. Don't let anyone, president, sheriff, neighbor, or stranger convince you that power is more important than decency. The best fences in life are the ones you can open and close for friends, not the ones you lock up tight forever. Sometimes in the quiet, after the chaos, I'd stand by the gate, hand resting on the old wood, and just breathe. No sirens, no shouting, just the sound of the land and the knowledge that I'd kept my promise, that this patch of earth, these people, this community had found its way back to itself. Maybe that's all any of us can ask for. So wherever you are, if you've ever felt alone against a crowd or doubted whether standing your ground was worth the fight, let me be the first to tell you it is. Your peace matters, your boundaries matter, and so does your willingness to let people come back from their worst mistakes. If you made it this far, do me one favor, drop a comment. Share your own story, or just let me know where you're watching from. We're all neighbors in the end. And who knows, maybe the next fence you build won't be to keep people out, but to mark the place where you decided to let forgiveness back in. Take care, neighbor, And remember, when the world goes crazy, keep your gate strong, your heart open, and your sense of humor ready. That's how you survive an HOA war and come out the other side with your soul and your land still your own.